Good morning. This is David Bennett, and this is Bitcoin And, a podcast where I try to find the edge effect between the worlds of Bitcoin, gaming, permaculture, podcasting, and education to gain a better understanding of all. Edge effect is a concept from ecology describing a greater diversity of life where the edges of two systems overlap. While species from either system can be found at the edge, it is important to note there are species in the overlap that exist in neither system, and that is what I seek to uncover. So join me in discovering the variety of things being created as Bitcoin rubs up against other systems.
It is 6:09 p.m. Yeah, baby, yeah. We're in the evening time. It's the 16th of August, 2024, and this is episode 937, I believe, of Bitcoin. And I am going to be interviewing a gentleman by the name as Liminal. He is part of this thing called Project Alexandria, which is seeking to build kind of a library on the nostr protocol. It's a little bit deeper than that. Sadly, the first 20 minutes of this interview was completely and thoroughly trashed. That's right. I was using Hive Talk, and something really weird happened all of a sudden without me pressing any keys or blinking twice, or I don't know, calling down the Beelzebub upon the planet to wreak havoc. It just muted my microphone. And then I never could get it back. I kept unmuting my own microphone. I thought I could fix it in the mix, but it would just remute my microphone. And I don't know what the hell happened, but when I detached, I was unable to recover that 20 minutes of audio. So there's where introductions were done and a little bit of Liminal's history. But when we came back, Hive Talk was working just fine. And the reason I'm choosing Hive Talk is because I would rather use a pleb-built platform and somehow or another pipe them Satoshis than to pay another single red cent to legacy anything like Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. I honestly don't care. I'd rather deal with the heartache and pain and know that I'm trying to support plebs and plebs platforms, because that's what Liminal and his crew is trying. They're trying to build. All right, they're trying to build not just another nostr client. They're doing something very, very special. It's going to take them a long time to build because they all have other jobs and whatnot like that. But I wanted to get into a deeper mindset of what's exactly is going on with this Project Alexandria. And if you don't know, Alexandria is the name of a city in northern Africa, Egypt, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, it had this massive library, and thousands of years ago, it burnt to the ground, and everything was lost. There's conjecture that humanity was set back maybe 500 years by the knowledge that was actually lost in this library. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background as to what Project Alexandria is, but I guarantee you that it ends up being much more than a library. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drop you guys right into where Liminal and I picked up the conversation after, I don't know, Beelzebub decided to wreak havoc upon the face of the planet. And you can make your own determination as to what you think Project Alexandria is. All right. Let's see. I don't know how much of that was lost. So let's just do this. Let's get to the Project Alexandria and start talking about what that is and where and who's working with you on it.
Yeah, so it's basically we call it the nostr library, and we got Stella, Chip Tuner. We got there's quite a few people on here. Michael J. Yeah. So I mean, there's quite a few, and it's difficult for me to remember everyone. But we have about a 10 person team on Git Citadel itself,
Yeah.
where some are working on our own nostr library, and with Alexandria, there's the aspect of displaying these specific notes from the spec that we have. But ultimately, we call it nostr library, but I also call it a knowledge base, where using the features that nostr has, I think about you have a private relay, and if you're interested in biology, and another group, they're interested in chemistry, they can have their own private relays where they can put whatever they want, and they don't have to worry about being intruded by anyone else that's not part of their group. But their content is up for display and to be broadcasted to other relays. And a third party, maybe they are interested in computational biology, so they have to pull in stuff from the biology relay, the chemistry relay, and the mathematics and physics relay, and they're just pulling it in and kind of taking and collaborating with the existing notes, whether they are permissioned by the original group, or if they are, they don't need to actually know the original people, but just by pulling in the notes, they can actually edit it or comment on it. But if those original relays see those notes, they can also welcome them in and have more collaboration. It's just kind of having it up for display. And I think there's a whole real cool aspect with the monetary layer and how people can both share knowledge and get paid for it.
Well, now for the listeners, Project Alexandria, I presume that you guys named Project Alexandria after the Library of Alexandria that burnt down centuries ago, with untold amounts of knowledge just gone. It seems like the idea, if I kind of take that idea and just run with it a little bit, that you guys are trying to build some sort of library that exists on relays, but maybe the first iteration is just so groups can, like computational biology groups, can work together, but they can be sure that all of the work that they're doing together is going to kind of remain in some way, shape, form, or fashion if we have our way about it forever. Is that kind of where that direction is going?
What do you mean by our way about it forever?
The whole thing with the Library of Alexandria burning down and laying waste to this vast storehouse of knowledge was I think a blow to humanity. We don't know what was lost. And when I look at what you guys are doing, you and Stella and the rest, what I think is going on is that you're kind of reconstructing a way to have a library in a completely different way that takes on more of the decentralized notion of relays, that takes on more of a notion of that there's copies on all these different relays, and maybe not a complete copy on every single relay, but when you take the whole thing in aggregate across a network, that you would almost be able to rebuild the entire library out of 10 relays, if 1,000 relays that had parts and parcels of this information got burned down. Is that's sort of the way that I think about it. And like I was telling you earlier before we had audio problems, I may be getting this wrong. And if I am getting it wrong, I don't mind being wrong. I just want to make sure that I am thinking about this correctly.
Well, yeah, I think that the relays really offer a level of redundancy to the content that's on there. So, if you want to share your knowledge out there and other people find it interesting, they can broadcast it to their own relays. And they can also continue the conversation outside of the relay that was there. So, I think about also the NIPs on Nostr. So right now it's the NIPs and the conversation for Nostr development is on GitHub, but I really don't think that there's a problem with having a private relay that hosts the NIPS repository, and the main developers that contribute to that repository, they can develop the specs, they can have conversations on it, and it's completely visible to everyone and also accessible through Nostr clients, because it's actually it's nice to have that kind of integration. And anyone can take what's on there, clone it, edit it, because the whole point is, yes, you have interoperability, but you can also kind of do your own thing. And the problem there is with Signal. So if you have 1,000 different forks of these different specs, well, how do you find the signal, and how do you find this cohesion? Well, you can always look to this kind of quote unquote official relay that has the official specs. And if you want to be interoperable, you can stay there. But if you want to, have the specs completely reversed and, do some sort of, artistic, Nostr client that changes everything around, you can, and you're not really bothering anyone because the source signal is on the private relay.
Right. I guess my question is like, I've got a Start9 little server, like a server one. It's actually, it's small, but it's actually pretty powerful. And I can run a Nostr relay on it. And I have one spun up, but I've got the service stopped because I was only using it sort of as a test. Would I be able to just like say, here's my relay, and then have you guys over at, Project Alexandria or Get Citadel say, yeah, since you're offering, we'll add it to a list, and then all of a sudden whatever it is that you guys are doing gets copied over on my relay? Is that something that helps, or is it something that's not very helpful? Or because what I'm getting at is I don't understand relays the way that I don't understand the extent to which you guys are thinking about Project Alexandria. I think I know what a relay is, but I'm probably getting it wrong. So I kind of wonder, that would be my question. When we're talking about the Nostr ecosystem, exactly what is a relay? Is that easily explainable?
Like a server. I use the, let's say Twitter or X. You have the data layer, which is where everyone's tweets and etc. go and is stored, and then you have the client, which takes the data and displays it according to the specifications that they want to display the data. And with a relay, it's similar in that sense, but now anyone can spin up a relay or a server. My understanding was just like keep them, a relay and server, more or less the same as from the same perspective. But so it's just like the relay holds the data, and it can also broadcast the data. So you can connect to any relay and look at the data in there. And then the clients will connect to specific relays, and using the specifications of Nostr, they will work with the data how they see fit. So there's NIP1, which displays the standard notes, and now you have all these clients that they decide the format, how it's displayed on the screen. But there's a separation between the client and the relay, where the client developers don't actually need to worry about the relay. They just need to pull in data from the relays. And then you have relay developers that are just working on the data layer.
Okay. So a relay, it sounds to me like just so that I get it right, that a relay really is just a data server, but it's addressable over the web as a public entity.
Yeah.
So I can address it and then start looking at the data, and then other people can address it and pull data from it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've got a network of these relays running around, that's where I keep thinking about going back to Project Alexandria, and then the crazy ass ideas that it's kind of ignited in my head about it. That's sort of where I feel safer with something like knowledge being a project like yours that is starting up to provide a long-term container for addressable knowledge for the public. And I want to make sure that the listeners, because like there are several times when I've listened to podcasts that I wish that they would just explain it to me like I was 5, because there's so much that I miss on, even if it's should be a simple concept. Somehow or another, when I'm listening to it, it becomes something convoluted and I start, messing it up. So that's why I'm kind of like a dog with a bone on this. But one of the things that you said earlier was, well, actually, I don't want to do that yet. I want to talk about like a specific example, because you were talking about like a group of people like doing computational biology, working together through this project, and then the sum total of what it is that they're working on remains contained in these public addressable server containers. What about just putting on a book that already exists? I mean, because that seems to be a different way of addressing the Project Alexandria. Is that something that you guys are thinking about as well, or is this just for more like group work and containment of what was worked on?
So there are 2 main specs that have been created for kind of knowledge bases. There is what I'm calling modular articles, and it's a way of transforming the famous note-taking method, Zettelkasten, and applying it to articles. And for anyone not familiar with that, a Zettelkasten is called or the slip box method. Basically, you have an index card with a title, a unique identifier, and then the content, which is the text. And it's supposed to refer to previous content, like whether that's a paper or another note. It's just referring to it, and it's like it's a small enclosed idea about something, basically, right? It's enough that the meaning gives rise to itself, because you don't need to look at anything else. But the ideas are derived from older or other content. And a modular article basically takes these index cards and it assembles them in a linear fashion, which that's how articles and books are made, right? Like you have the introduction section, or you have pages. It's linear, but if you can partition it in a I guess meaningful way, whether that is by chapter or by paragraph or maybe even by sentence, you can still compose them together in from beginning to end, and it'll look exactly like an article. But now the difference is that it's very searchable and indexable, because you don't have to search through a whole textbook. And this is one of my gripes when kind of reading papers. They'll cite a really long paper or a textbook, and this idea comes from there. But then, if you want to verify that, you have to really dive into the source material. And in this case, if you are actually working with these modular articles, you can specify the location where the knowledge that you're writing, where it comes from. And it's like a very almost like a locational citation, but it can generalize to other things. It can Stella wrote an article on Highlighter about publishing the Bible, or publishing the Gutenberg, whatever's on Gutenberg, because you can still work by chapter, you can work by paragraph, and nothing is really different. It's just that intrinsically, even if it's hidden by the user, but intrinsically they're all separated and searchable.
Yeah, and that's where I'm really happy that we're having that discussion about where you're saying Zettelkasten, because that was one of the first things that I started thinking about when I saw this project, was that I have my own Obsidian vault. Actually, I've got 2, and I really shouldn't. It should just be 1 vault, but I do have 2. And when I'm looking at either one of the vaults, I see all this connectedness, like, and you kind of can't help it as long as because the way that I do it is I'll read a book on my Kindle and I'll highlight, a passage, and then I've got Obsidian has a plugin that allows you to download all of the notes that you've taken or all the highlights that you've done in Kindle, and it gives you the location, and then that way I can go back and I can go, okay, now take this note or take this highlight that you did this, what were you thinking? Why did it catch your attention? Is it connected to anything else? And of course, if I've got 40 highlights from the same book, they're going to be connected. That's fine inside that one container that is that book. But now I read all kinds of stuff about, I've got many soil books that I've read, many mycology books that I've read. Yeah, I've read a whole book about just carbon, the Symphony in C. If you haven't read that book, it's actually really good. But there's things in Symphony in C that relate directly to one of these other authors or one of these other books, and I'll make those connections. But my problem is that it's all just me. It's all which is great because that way that keeps it separate. But when I saw Project Alexandria, I was like, and the fact that it was being built in Nostr, I started seeing the potential for my Obsidian Vault to start making links outside to other people's vaults. And then that's sort of where I was getting at when we were discussing earlier. We had a whole discussion that got destroyed, but the mycological networks, and I'm looking at my Obsidian Vault as its own network, and then I know other people have their Obsidian Vaults, and it looks like a network. But if using Nostr, I can make at least one connection to somebody else's vault, all of a sudden there becomes a huge potential for real knowledge creation to start exploding. And how would I've talked to one of my good friends, Hodlbod, has made Coracle, Coracle.social. And we've had a discussion about this. But I'm not sure. It's just interesting to get a different perspective. So knowing what you know about how Nostr works and knowing what you know about Zettelkasten, how would it be possible for a note out of my Obsidian to connect with a note in your Obsidian or Rome and not have this end up being noise? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So first I want to talk about the network aspect. Nostr actually has, you can think of very different levels of networks. There's the clients that can aggregate different relays together, and so that's one way, right? You can actually, by doing that, you're kind of creating a single node where relays all kind of mesh together. And there's also the network of followee, where I follow you but you don't follow me, or we follow each other. That's also another type of network, almost like a social network. And then there's also the almost individually at the relay level. If you have kind of, as you said, vaults, right? Where only you or maybe a few people can access. You can have a relay where you have your 12 people talking and communicating, trying to, build something together, and you can do it in isolation. And then another group can have their own relay, same thing, private. And maybe a few people from both groups are able to communicate to both relays, or there's a third group that isn't allowed to either of them, but they're watching. They can read from those relays and pull in that stuff, or any kind of combination like that. So you have different types of connections and networks that actually really work and synergize together. And with the how do you handle noise, right? Where we have large language models that people are going to be using for any number of reasons, whether that's actually making things useful or or flooding people's periphery with noise so that where they're just like, oh, well, I can't even make any sense out of what's going on. So I'm not going to even care about it because everything is just noise. And this is where the second spec, NKBIP 02, comes in, where you're working with embeddings. And what an embedding is, it's just you have words and you are representing it with numbers, which is just a coordinate. You can think about it like a XYZ. That's a list of three numbers. Well, language models will have a list of 700 numbers as a single coordinate, and that is the way I think of it is like it's an approximate way for how we actually think of meaning or how we represent things. So and it doesn't the specific coordinate changes depending on how this model is trained and the specific text it's trained on. But ultimately, after enough training and after whatever learning is going on in these models, you can have a word that says the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? And that's a specific coordinate, right?
Right.
But that will also have some sort of proximity to the powerhouse of a city is the electric plant, right? There's a proximity to that is different from saying there was a fire in a forest, right? The real cool thing about these language models is that they are a computational approximation for meaning. That's how I kind of think of it. Mm-hmm. And so in a world where we can be flooded with AI generated noise, essentially, we can actually navigate this space with embeddings and find related ideas. And also, if we're just working with nostr, you don't need to embed everything. You can embed whatever is most meaningful to you. Mm-hmm. And because it takes resources to train your model and to also get embeddings for that, or to even work with like a large number of nodes. Uh-huh. And so if when you pair these kind of partitioned articles, right, like a paragraph, and you have an embedding for that, you can, and you have say 1,000 or a couple thousand other notes, you can really see what other notes are actually semantically close to it. And this works. There are two types of ways to navigate, right? You can navigate with direct links, whether it's a citation or just pointing to a source, which is what like Obsidian works with. We have hyperlinks or tags or anything like that, and that's nice. But there's also limitations. So there's been problems recently about kind of this computational spam where you have a bot that just like putting all hashtags and labels and that they can imagine to increase their reach.
Right.
And so that muddies everything up for everyone else. And it's the reason for that is really you want to increase the reach and the attention on your ideas, which is why they were created, right? Like the whole Web 2.0 use hashtags to organize and search information, but then you just have this bad incentive where you don't know how to effectively select hashtags. So not only do you have to put the specific words relevant to your content, but you also want to, kind of add more or put everything under the sun just so that way you get more increase, but then that becomes spam.
Right.
And well, if you have embeddings, it's a different situation because now you're actually working with meaning. So anything that's not actually related, through some distance, which you can actually calculate, if it's farther than that, then it really doesn't mean anything to you, or at least in that situation.
Yeah, that's what I keep wondering. Here's one of the things that I get on my own, just inside my own vault, and I'm not using like an AI bot to crawl it or anything, is that when I go to add a new node, one of the first things that I start thinking about is how can I connect it with something else, like what's called for the listeners, what's called a backlink. So I can like I'm writing a note and like if it organically occurs to me, oh, that's like this one note that I wrote in Symphony in C from the book Symphony in C. And then I'll do like some light searching and if I can find the note, great. And then in my new note, I will put a direct link to that old note so that forever and on, every time I come across this note, I'll see this backlink. And when I hit it, it takes me to this other note. Well, that's great if you know to link these notes. What I'm starting to have I'm not having problems, but it's starting to creep up on me as something that I'm going, I'm writing notes. And if I don't write notes like every day, and that's supposed to be a habit, like the Zettelkasten guy, I can't remember his name. He wrote 8 a day and he did it for like 45 years. Well, I don't do that.
Nicholas Luhmann.
Yeah. And because I don't do that, and I kind of forget what it is that I've written. And then now I find myself reaching like I should, or I ought. I have this moralistic or ethical need to put in a backlink. And I'm like, what you're also probably doing is causing noise for yourself. You're fighting to do this thing because you think you should do this thing. And you probably shouldn't do the thing if you don't immediately have this idea in your head. So that's just me as a single individual organically. And now I start thinking about the notion of embedding and what can happen. What's the analog of what I just described when we get into embeddings? And that's where I get back to keeping noise out of the system. Like you were saying, just spam hashtags so that everybody and everything can see this one node, and all it does is make me not want to look at hashtags anymore. So I guess, and I don't know how to answer that. I mean, is there a way that we can limit that kind of thing where we're just fighting to link everything to everything else? Is there a parameter that we can attach to an embedding saying, I don't know, don't fight too hard or something like that?
Well, I think of the labels and hashtags or backlinks. These are all manual and really good for human navigation. And then the embeddings are more context-free. So if you have multiple knowledge bases that you want to pull in from, and you're writing something that you think is related, but you don't exactly know what the original source content is, you can take that embedding and basically calculate the distances between that one note and all the other notes. Uh-huh. And then, you can say everything under this distance, or calculate the closest neighbors, right? There's basically a decreasing list of, coordinates that, the farther out it goes, the less relevant it is. So right. You don't actually need to worry about linking everything. You can actually do that later once you find, the relationships between different nodes.
Okay, so this notion of embedding and this context free is just kind of looking at what's most similar, and then you make the decision later. It's like, I'll show you what's closest, but you're going to actually have to open these things up and make the determination as to whether or not this is relevant to you
for the human navigation, I would say. But you can use both. You can definitely use both. If you have a series of 100 notes and you're writing something, and you want to figure out which one is the closest semantically, and you apply this distance out, it's called a k-nearest neighbors, and there's extensions to that of figuring out which points are closest to the point that you care about. Mm-hmm. And you can just say it's just a distance that that increases as you go further away, and just say, just give me the top 7. Give me the top 7 closest neighbors to this, right? And then you can see what's related. Or if you're doing coding and you have GitHub Copilot up there, what I think about is actually if we are doing this collaborative knowledge base and we have devs on Nostr that are kind of submitting their code, and it's partitioned by however they code, like by function or by class, by file, whatever, you can essentially write something or put a comment that says, oh, I want to pull in notes from a specific relay, and I just don't know because I have no idea how to code. Well, the language model could take that and assign it to, or basically figure out semantically what other pieces of code are closest to that. Like, because other devs, if they submitted their code with maybe even comments as well, there's a relationship. Like, you can actually calculate, like, even though between programming languages or comments, even though they're all using different syntax, the meaning is similar. And that's what these large language models are actually working with.
Yeah, and that's what, people use the term AI, and I just don't like using that, so I'm going to stay with large language models. And there's like a whole camp of people that just think it's nonsense. And then there's, other people that think it's going to like become so overarching in society that everybody loses their jobs. I know the truth is in the middle somewhere, and so I exist pretty much, I think, on the left-hand side of the exact middle between complete nonsense and welcome our robot overlords, right? Because when I look at the ability, like what you're just saying, like I'll go back to my time when I was doing a lot of 3D modeling. When you're making a model in 3D, your best friend is figuring out a way to make selections so that you can modify what it is. You need to grab something that you need to modify. And if you're working with thousands of polygons on a model, you need to be able to select which ones that you want to make, which makes selection tools probably the most important part. I actually think selection tools are more important than the model generation tools. Like, build me a polygon. It takes second order to select that polygon layer. And I think that that's what LLMs in this context is able to do, is become a selection tool. It doesn't mean that it knows what the hell it's doing, and it doesn't mean it's going to be a robot overlord, but it also means that that's not nonsense. That is a very highly utilitarian tool, right? But as I think about this, and I'm thinking about the notion of embeddings, what I kind of want to do is and you may not think about it this way, but I'm just going to go with it and pray I'm just going to throw it out there and pray for the best. What does a note look like? Like, let's say that I've written a note. I've got one ready to go in Obsidian. I actually have the ability to publish right out of Obsidian to Nostr, which is a plugin that I cannot believe is there. I thought that was awesome. Whoever made that, thank you. So I've got
shout out to James Magoo.
Is that it?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I could probably find out real quick who did that one. I'm just going to crank that up for just a sec. But so I've got all of my notes are done in Markdown. They're like Rome does Markdown, Obsidian does Markdown. Markdown language is like one of the easiest and most simple things in the world. So I can write a note that has a heading, and then maybe a place for a couple of hashtags, for whatever reason. And then I'll get into the body of the note, and then I'll have the location or the reference, which is a backlink to Merlin Sheldrake's mycology book that I read. Mm. And then there will be the possibility that I've backlinked to another note that has nothing to do with Merlin Sheldrake whatsoever. And then at the very bottom of the way that I did my note structure is the Kindle location to where I can go directly to the file and find that highlight that the whole note came from. if I hit publish to nostr, it's just nothing but words, which is fine. But the notion that you say of add an embedding, what I just told you, is there a way that you can explain how an embedding might function with the note that I want to publish and make it functional out in the Nostrverse?
Yeah. So let's just start off with what a note looks like. You have a unique identifier. You have the time published, the specific content, and then there's a section for tags where you can put whatever hashtags, labels you want. And you can also have, within that tag section, you can also have these backlinks. As you can see with other notes on Nostr, we can comment on other notes, and we can also quote notes. And that's also within, you may see that within the content because that's how it's displayed, but within this JSON object is a reference to an original note. And that's how we see this organization. And with embeddings, it's more like it's its own note, it's its own JSON structure, but it's referring to the original source material, so that way you can actually look at just the numbers. If you want to preview, or if you want to look at where it comes from, you can also take that unique identifier and pull it in. But it's kind of a thing that happens after, because you can have multiple different models will have a different coordinate system essentially for this meaning that it's computed. And so you can have, I used OpenAI's Ada embedding, or you can use Llama embedding. They're all different. They're all different like coordinates, but the end result is that notes that are similar, or text that is similar, is closer, even though the space might be different.
Okay.
But if you want to work with the same space, or you want to actually compare things, you have to use the same model.
Okay. So, because I think for whatever reason, I keep thinking of the embedding as like something that you would include inside of a note that is a flag that says, please look at me and do something with me. But that's not what this is it?
That's definitely a capability of like, hey, please, I want this to be searchable through embeddings. I think that's definitely something that can be done.
Okay.
But nothing is stopping anyone from connecting to any relay and finding notes that they care about and embedding them without the original person's permission. Like that's what nostr.band does. They add labels to notes. I think nos.social also does that for specific terminology. They'll add a little label there saying, hey, this has profanity or whatever, and because it's permissionless.
Right.
But, I think, and also if you're working with a knowledge-based client like what we want to develop, once you submit a note, we can also automatically use an embedding to produce another note that is linked to that one.
Right. So I guess at the end of this, there would be a client that you could choose to use. And if you do, maybe it's got a really slick graphic user interface that shows the way the Nostrverse is for the last 4 hours, right? From your followers, or maybe you could even say from if you're using a web of trust model, say only the top 10 guys that in my web of trust model, I only want to see their notes for the past 4 hours. And then all of a sudden you see if they're connected at all, right? And then you can start going through and visually picking those and say, why is that one so close to these other three? What's going on there? And then all of a sudden you might find that it's fired up an idea, and now you've got to write an article about it. So it forces content creation. And I think that's, one of the ways that I look at Obsidian is a forcing function on content creation, not just a repository, but something that actually says, when you've done enough, you'll be able to look at this thing and go, I can knock out 500 words in a day, and I would have never thought about this before because I read these 3 notes concurrently because they were so close together. And then have that, like I said, now we've got this thing where we can reach out from our Obsidian vaults and start connecting to other people's ideas. And now we can have a client that looks at that interaction. I can't see what's inside your vault. I can only see what you've sent out. And since that is now out and in public domain, a client can actually look at those notes and say, here's the connections. And I honestly can't think of anything potentially more powerful, but also at the same time, potentially, without these, not safeguards, potentially as noisy without the issue of saying, I really need a client to show me what's close. And that closeness, the farther away it is, the more noise in between is sort of like a way for us to visually identify meaning. And how close are you guys to releasing something? I mean,
well, let's see. Well, there's ongoing work with the actual interface for Project Alexandria. I'm not. I tried having a little demo client up, and that's what's being worked on. But I'm not natively a web developer. I mostly work with data and trying to visualize that. And we're all doing this in our spare time with our full-time jobs. So
right.
But we're all really passionate about this stuff, and we're looking for, like, if we can find any type of funding to like help get this off the ground, we're all for that so we can put more time into that.
You guys had submitted a grant to OpenSats, but it was rejected, right? Or something?
Well, I think Stella and I may have individually done that. I initially submitted it last summer, but that was also when these ideas were still forming,
right?
But also acknowledging, like, hey, I'm not a web developer, so I don't know exactly. I'd like funding, not just for continued work, but to also pay developers to make the client, the actual web part of this. And I think Stella has also done the same thing. But I think if we find people that really believe in what we're trying to do, we are taking, any type of support we can, whether that's donations or developer support. We really want to help increase access to like education and learning.
Do you have a link tree or anything with all
we have a Geyser.fund.
Is that your main
for Git Citadel? Yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes because I know that address. I just, for whatever reason, I thought I was following it, but I had to refollow it. I don't know what's going on there, but I've got that address. I'll include it because I think that this project is really important. I don't think this is something that we can just say, because either y'all do it or somebody else is going to do it. I know that there's already, like, they're doing it over. I know they're doing it over at Twitter. They've had it at Facebook. They've had it at Instagram, but they're never going to release it. It is proprietary. It is it's one of the ways that they make money off of the people that use their network. And what you're doing is twisting that entire thing inside out and making it a useful tool for knowledge development, content, potential content creation for everybody that's on the Nostr network. And that's what helps destroy Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, because honestly, I can't even stomach getting on Twitter anymore. I mean, I've been banned 3 times, and now that I've been on Nostr for well over 2 years, the only time that I go back, I got a 4th account just so that I can post up announcements for this, like for the Bitcoin and podcast. When I go there to do that, it takes 30 seconds of scrolling to find something that pisses me off, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore, because they're using what you're describing in a terrible way. I know they are. And if we don't get,
ultimately it's for,
well, if we don't get that for us, if that's why it's important for, you know, as many people that are listening to this, if you can support this project, please do. Oh, by the way, do not either DM me or email me you got a GitAlby address or a Lightning wallet address?
Yeah.
Okay. I need that so that I can split you in this thing 50-50.
Cool.
Because I've been meaning to do that, but most of the people that I talk to most of the people that I talked to on this show so far haven't been so far down the rabbit hole that they know what I'm talking about when it comes to Zap Split. So I just don't even ask, but make sure that you give me that. Otherwise I can't put it in. So that's the way that I can support you directly from this show. And the listeners that listen to the show will know that they're supporting you directly, but the Geyser Fund, I'll put that in the show notes too. How can anybody get a hold of you outside of those two? I mean, this is like what your Liminal on Nostr.
Nostr, yeah.
And that's about it for you too?
Engage, yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Nostr only.
I know. I can't, like I said, I just can't put this thing down. But is there anybody else that people should be following out of this project, and what's their Nostr?
We got Stella and Lasserin. That's her Nippo 5, I think. Her Nostr address.
Okay.
We got Michael J. I can actually pull up the group.
Will you do me a favor? Will you send me the names of the people because that way I can go pull their Nostrs and I can include those in the show notes as well.
Cool. Yeah,
because
I'll send that.
I think people should be following, I love following Stella. You know, it's like I follow you and I follow at least 2 others from the group. And it's always good content. We've been talking about Project Alexandria, but for the last part of this, let's go up about 5,000, 50,000 feet. With macroeconomics, Bitcoin, Lightning Network, eCash, Fediment, Nostr, where do you see humanity going? What direction are we going?
Ooh, I don't know about the direction humanity is going, but I just kind of see Nostr having a real Nostr and all these interoperable ecosystems being the kind of mycelial network that connects individuals and servers, developers. It's just, you have these pockets of organization, whether that is, developer groups, communities, and that's where people are aggregating. And right now, as most of Nostr is we just kind of throw all the relays into a single client, and you get problems with kind of intrusion into your conversation by by just people outside of the core group. Maybe they're lacking the context. Maybe they're actually malicious and trying to just, stir up something. And I think that, especially with Nostr and with this kind of the financial layers that work with it, we can actually separate these communities so that way they can start flourishing. So actually putting kind of walls around communities so that way they can let people in, but also keep whoever they don't want out. And I think you bring up the edge effect a lot, right? I really think that having this kind of separation between communities and individuals will help those communities flourish into their own thing, building in silence without without external forces letting whatever they're building collapse through noise. Mm-hmm. But then also you have individuals that are kind of traversing between these communities, and whether that is just individually they look at these walled off areas, or they're broadcasting a specific note to other related communities. It's going to really bring up a lot of collaboration and mixing, which is, it's really, I feel like just how nature has happened, right? You have everything mixed up together, and then at some point there's differentiation between organisms or between tissues, and because they're protected, they're able to have their own boundaries and specialize in their own areas. But interesting happen, and if by having this like traversing between communities, you also have very interesting things happen, because it's this very specific and selected mixing that is allowed by the people that connect those communities.
So one of the things that I wonder about quite a bit is the Reformation, the Renaissance. It's basically brought on by the invention or the cobbling together, not really invention, the cobbling together of the printing press. First book, Gutenberg Bible. Now you didn't have to go to church to read the Word of God. It was not just that, but it was like the existence of the printing press and the existence of the stripping away of the power of the church by putting the Word of God into the hands of anybody that could actually get one of these books, which, while a peasant wasn't able to afford a Gutenberg Bible, a lot of people were able to get these, And that kicked off the Renaissance. And a lot of people said the World Wide Web, the www and the internet is going to do the same thing, and it didn't. So what do you think? What's the difference between, like, because I think I got my first like when I was first undergrad at Texas Tech was 91, 92, and right around that time they gave you an email address, and that was like email is like sort of just infiltrating into the colleges. And then about 6 months after that, they said, if you want to be able to navigate the World Wide Web, come down to IT and get your PPP account. All right. So I go do that, and I get Netscape. All right. And I was hearing about, how it was going to be the second Renaissance. And it just wasn't. I never felt it. I was like, I didn't call bullshit, but I never had a feeling like, yeah, this is going to change everything. For me, it was like, why is this picture downloading so slow? That was what I was concerned about around that time. But now we've got money interacting with ideas in an open framework that just seems to be ingesting. If it even remotely looks like a network and it's similar, it's almost as if they're automatically seeking each other out. What changed? Do you got any idea? I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think part of it is, kind of going off of the framework of companies. Even before the internet existed, you just have these individuals kind of building their own monolith, and seeking funding to help contribute and build that monolith. And whatever, we have Web 2.0, where you have platforms that are trying to keep you in, and then whatever developments in that platform are built to actually have keep you in there and keep you engaged, because that brings in more money through advertisement, right? But these same tools can be used for more educational, like rather than recommending the most incendiary content to help you glue your eyes to the screen and get a rise out of you. You can recommend other things that are maybe not, if that's the world you want to be in, and be throwing fire at people, like, yeah, you can be there, right? But you can also get recommendations from just actual similar content that is just not necessarily the easiest to consume, but because it's related, you're going to actually put the work into to learn it. And this is what nostr is developing, and I guess a lot of these decentralized technologies is really having this permissioned or unpermissioned interaction between communities and between the silos that have been created. And silos are great. That's having protection and boundaries is how things have gotten to develop into like whether that's a flourishing ecosystem or a medieval like the castle with the walls, and you have a whole community that's helping build and protect the community that is being kind of cultivated and under the control of a single ruler. That's fine, but I think now we're really able to move beyond that and have more collaboration and more agency to the individuals, as opposed to just more the like a top-down perspective where the individual at the top is deciding what the individuals at the bottom do. And that was pretty effective, but now I think this is giving us more agency.
Yeah, I that's a great answer, because something has clearly changed. But one of the things that I'm looking forward to the most is to see y'all's continued work on this project. And if there's any announcements, if you guys want to get the word out about something, please just hit me up. I'll put y'all back on in a heartbeat to get this out, because I think watching what I'm seeing is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen happen. And I'm so happy to be alive during this particular time. I could have been alive, any time, but this particular time, while it's hard on a lot of us and it's still hard on me as well, just I can't imagine living in any other time to watch these kinds of things happen. So I'm just praying for your continued success and your continued work. If guys that are listening, please help them out. Go over to their Geyser Fund. It'll be in the show notes. And whatever it is that you're dropping on me on this episode, half of it is going to go to my friend Liminal. I'm going to stop the recording. You hang on for a second and just say bye to the crew.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. It was a great time to be on, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Okay, so just so that you're aware, I am dropping Liminal has given me a functional Lightning Network address or wallet address, and I am dropping that into the split to help support the Project Alexandria. So please, when you're boosting, understand that not only are you boosting me or streaming me Satoshis, but half of everything that this episode makes in perpetuity will always go to Liminal's wallet. So spread this episode far and wide, boost generously, because they don't have any other financial support to get this project off the ground. And I think that this project very well may be one of the more important projects in not only the nostr space, but in the space for humanity, where we try to have new ideas and come up with new concepts and affect change on this planet. And this is one way that we might be able, this might be a discovery tool for discovering other people and other people's ideas that we can directly interact with in a way that we've never really been able to interact with somebody else's thoughts or ideas or writings ever before in the history of humanity. And while that may be just a bit of hyperbole, I don't think it is. I think that we have been trained as good little girls and boys in public school to never have any vital thoughts, and to, God forbid, ever actually verbalize what you think might be a vital thought, because people will think you're stupid, or people will think you're gay, or people will think you're, I don't know, what am I trying to say here? A nerd. And that you're just embarrassing yourself when you say things that really mean something. And this it's not just this project that really means something to me. It's watching a potential network of humanity build something together that they might not even know that they're building it together. And I'm not talking about building Project Alexandria. I'm talking about being part of it and using it as a platform to build ideas with each other that we may or may not know we're actually building together.
it's, like I said, this is very much different than anything that we've ever seen. And I want to see these people get supported very heavily so that they can come up with a very nice client that makes sense, has a user experience that makes sense when it comes to interacting with each other's ideas. So with all that said, again, boost generously, stream generously. And if you can't afford to do that, then spread the episode far and wide so other people can look at these ideas and say, I want to be a part of that, or I have an idea for that. And I'll see you on the other side.
This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.